In May 1945, on Okinawa, the ground trembled under Japanese artillery. Smoke and dust swallowed the battlefield like a deadly fog. American units were retreating down the cliffs of Hacksaw Ridge in chaos. But amid the rushing soldiers, one lone figure stood still, staring at the wounded men left behind on the summit. He did not turn back. He did not retreat. This soldier carried no weapon. In his hands were only a medic's bag, a few rolls of gauze, and an unshakable belief. As flares lit up the sky, he knelt down in the thunder of explosions and whispered a quiet prayer. "Lord, please help me get one more." His name was Desmond Doss, the only World War II hero to receive the Medal of Honor without firing a single shot. But to understand that impossible decision, we have to go back to Lynchburg, Virginia, where a skinny boy grew up between family violence and powerful religious conviction. Doss carried a vow in his heart. Even if he went to war, he would never touch a weapon. He believed he was born to save lives, not take them. When he enlisted, he became the unit's joke. Soldiers mocked him, officers scolded him, and some even beat him simply because he refused to pick up a rifle. Commanders saw him as a burden, even tried to discharge him for mental instability. But Doss refused to quit. He endured every insult just to remain in the Army as a medic. To him, war was a place where help was needed more than hate. If he had to go into battle, he would bring faith with him, not a gun. On their first climb up the Maeda Escarpment, the men learned immediately why Americans called it Hacksaw Ridge, like a giant saw cutting through flesh. Japanese defenses were dug deep. Tunnels, trenches, and machine guns woven together into a perfect killing ground. Every step forward meant stepping closer to death. Within minutes, the battlefield turned into hell. American soldiers fell in clusters, blood spreading across the muddy earth. As the order to retreat echoed through the smoke, those still alive slid down the cargo nets, leaving behind dozens of wounded men on the ridge. No one believed anyone could go back up there and survive. No one, except one man. Doss scanned the devastated landscape. He heard faint moans, the dying voices of men clinging to life. He knew that if he left now, they would die alone, frightened, forgotten in the darkness. No one else would return for them. No one but him. He carried no weapon, yet possessed a courage even seasoned soldiers struggled to understand. He lowered himself to the ground, crawling toward the first cry he heard. Craters, barbed wire, burned-out vehicles, everything blocked his path, yet he kept moving, inch by inch. When he reached the first wounded soldier, Doss bandaged him, calmed him, then dragged him through the smoke toward the cliff edge. Exhausted and trembling, he breathed deeply. And that same quiet prayer rose again. "Lord, please help me get one more." One rescue became two. Two became five. And before Doss realized it, he was moving through the battlefield like a shadow dragging men out of death's reach, while Japanese soldiers searched for survivors to finish off. Every time he lowered another wounded man over the cliff using his improvised rope system, the soldiers below stared upward in disbelief. They had no idea who was doing it, or how he was still alive. The ridge was a maze of death. Machine gun nests, hidden snipers, grenades buried under rubble. Yet somehow Doss always found the narrow angles, the blind spots, the fleeting seconds where he could gamble his life to save someone else's. Hours passed. The smoke grew thicker, the screams fewer. Most men would have collapsed from exhaustion, but Doss forced himself to keep moving, whispering the same prayer with every breath. Just one more. Sometimes he carried them on his back. Sometimes he crawled, dragging a soldier twice his weight through mud and blood. But no matter how long it took, he would not leave a man behind. When Japanese patrols swept the ridge searching for American survivors, Doss hid among the wounded, pressing himself into the ground, barely breathing, waiting for the danger to pass. By dawn, he was covered in dirt, ash, and dried blood, none of it his. He had been working alone for nearly 12 hours straight, and still, he rose to his knees again, body shaking, and whispered, "One more, please, Just one more. Down below, the surviving soldiers watched stretcher after stretcher descend from the sky. Only then did they realize one man, just one, had stayed behind to do the impossible. When Doss finally slipped over the cliff edge himself, barely conscious, the medics below counted the wounded he had saved. 75 men. 75 lives carried out of hell by a man who refused to carry a weapon. The next morning, the entire battalion prepared to assault the ridge again. But something unexpected happened. No one moved. They weren't waiting for ammunition. They weren't waiting for orders. They were waiting for Doss. Men who once mocked him now refused to fight unless he was with them. "We're not going up there without Doss," they told the officers. "We need him." The assault was delayed until Doss finished his Sabbath prayer. On that day, the battalion marched upward, not with fear, but with faith. In the battles that followed, Doss once again walked into gunfire to pull wounded men to safety. He threw himself onto a grenade to save his squad, suffering deep shrapnel wounds across his legs. Days later, as he was being carried on a stretcher, he spotted another soldier in worse condition. Doss rolled off the stretcher, refusing treatment, and ordered the medics to take the other man first. Moments later, a sniper's bullet shattered his left arm. With blood pouring down his sleeve, Doss fashioned a splint from a rifle stock and crawled more than 200 meters to reach friendly lines. He was finally evacuated from the battle he had given everything to. But even as he faded into unconsciousness, he apologized to the doctors for not being able to help more men. Months later, President Harry Truman placed the Medal of Honor around Doss's neck, the highest military award the United States can give. Truman said, "This is a greater honor than being president." But after the war, Doss returned home quietly. No victory tours, no speeches. He worked simple jobs, raised a family, and rarely spoke about what happened on Hacksaw Ridge. For decades, his story remained almost forgotten until historians uncovered records, testimonies, and the reports that confirmed the impossible truth of that night. Today, we remember Desmond Doss, not because he was the strongest, or the fastest, or the deadliest, but because in a place built for destruction, he chose to save. He proved that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to love others more than yourself. Don't forget to hit subscribe to discover more untold stories of World War II.